Good afternoon, good evening, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. We had the great pleasure and opportunity after last week's election to talk to one of the people, well, probably the person who is the top official for the Democratic Party in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. His name is Chairman. Sorry, guys, this was a good lollipop. I gotta put it down now. His name is Chairman Steve Kerrigan, and he has graced us this morning to talk to you guys about what's going on nationally throughout the Commonwealth and then throughout the municipalities of the Commonwealth. So we want to first say thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is an opportunity, guys. This gentleman right here is the chairman of the Mass Democratic Party. For those that don't know, he's basically the top Democratic official in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
For the party, yes.
Yes, for the Democratic Party. I keep trying to tell you guys, Democratic Party,
Right.
for the fact that one of the things we want you to know is that there are two separate parties in the Commonwealth. One of the things nationally that we'll talk about is, does the chairman get to select who is running for president of the United States? Do you get a voice in that?
Well, yeah, to some extent. So as chair of the Mass Democratic Party, first, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the opportunity. As chair of the Democratic Party in Massachusetts, as is the case with the other chairs, there are 57 delegations, the 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, Democrats abroad, the Marianas Islands, Guam,
And Virgin Islands, maybe?
And the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Don't tell my friend Carol in the Virgin Islands, but I love her. I love you, Carol.
We didn't forget you.
We didn't forget you. She keeps inviting me. I keep telling her I'm glad to come and visit. So there are 57 chairs, and all of us, as that designation, are members of the Democratic National Committee as well. In that regard, we have a voice on national politics and certainly around the nominating process. For president, I also am lucky enough to be elected by my peers in the DNC to represent them on what's called the Rules and Bylaws Committee. And right now, what we're doing is determining the entire process for how we elect our next Democratic nominee.
And this is for the 2026, 28.
Yep. So it's when the primaries will be, what primaries will be first, whether it's New Hampshire again, or if it's still South Carolina. So all of those questions, how delegates get allocated at the convention, all of that stuff. And so there's a lot of work that goes into that. So in that regard, we have a chance to have a voice. But my job here in Massachusetts is to make sure we have as many Democrats engaged in the process of electing Democrats up and down the ballot all across the Commonwealth.
All right, we're going to get to the up and down the Commonwealth in a minute,
Sure.
because one of the things that we wanted to talk about in that we want to keep it kind of nationally for a couple of minutes. Give an example of the chairman of a state Democratic Party moving an election, pro or con. You have a background. You've been with the Obama team early. You've been with the transition team.
Yes.
You've been across the spectrum of political operative.
Yes.
You know, you operate in different areas and you have an extension of like a career. And you're still careering.
Yes, I am. I like that. I'm careering. That's nice.
And one of the things we want to know is some examples of how influential, maybe not you or could be you, or an example of something being voiced and a movement happened.
So I'll say this. I always say to people that Massachusetts has two great exports, cranberries and political activists.
Okay.
And none of us are cranberries, but all of us can be activists. And that's a big part of my job, right, is to mobilize people and engage them in races that are critical for this election. So let's take last week, for example.
Okay.
Massachusetts Democrats in the last, 6 or 9 months made more phone calls and knocked more doors in New Jersey and Virginia on behalf of the two Democratic nominees for governor in those states than any state in the union other than Virginia and New Jersey.
Right.
And that's our track record. We've done it in Kentucky. We did it in Pennsylvania. We also did it in Pennsylvania this cycle for their 3 Supreme Court races, which all won. And we sent a lot of folks down in Pennsylvania in cars and then up to Maine to knock doors, because Maine just had a ballot question that largely got ignored, but the Republican Party was pushing a ballot question where it would require voter identification, where you'd have to bring your ID in order to vote, which is not.
That's like a tax.
You're right. Exactly. It's an idea of suppressing the vote. And initially it polled really well and was going to pass. And we worked with our partners up in Maine, and we sent volunteers. We actually had Maine come down and speak at our state convention in Springfield in September. And we had volunteers on the phone, volunteers knocking on doors, and we had a huge impact. And that ballot question went down in a huge way last Tuesday, which is great. So we have impacts in elections all across the country because Massachusetts Democrats don't know how to not be active and engage when it really matters. And of course, in a presidential year, we are everywhere. We're in New Hampshire, we're in Maine, we're in Pennsylvania, we're in North Carolina, we're all over the place doing what we can to help impact elections.
So how do, we heard that the VP, when she was running, accumulated all of this money, almost $1 billion.
No, 1.7 billion.
Okay, so over $1 billion.
Yeah.
All right, so does the Commonwealth of Massachusetts teams that do these calls, do these runs, get any portion of that? And if so, how? I wanted to say, how can we get some?
So Massachusetts, we're lucky. Look, there's no risk. It has been more than 30 years since even one electoral vote in Massachusetts ever went for a Republican. So
nationally,
and so we're lucky there. We are the state that donates more money to Democratic causes and candidates per capita more than any other state in the country. More than $1 billion in 2024 came off of Martha's Vineyard alone.
Really?
And so I remind my friends all
$1 billion
off of that one island. Yeah.
Wow.
I remind my friends all across the country, don't forget we're the ones who give you all the money to do what you're doing. So come back and help us out when we need it.
I want to use that one
time. Because there's a lot of stuff that we do want to do here. We've got the governor on the ballot next year. The governor, lieutenant governor, who need our support, who need the resources. We will have a competitive Senate race. We now have a primary, and we'll have a competitive general election. So there's a lot of races that we need the resources for here in Massachusetts.
Okay.
We are proud to do our part.
Yes.
Proud to do our part. And we're actually really proud that Kamala Harris's last event as the nominee for vice president was in Provincetown. The next day, the switch happened. And one of the first events she did, 6 days after the switch, was in Pittsfield.
Okay.
She understood to come to Massachusetts for
money.
Right.
But it makes sense that is a thing. And in kind of switching gears a little bit, Massachusetts, in looking at some of the data, depends on who you look at, received, the vice president received over 60% of the votes, of the ballots for the presidential election.
Yes.
But there was a third of the Commonwealth that did not. Mm-hmm. Is that a growing percentage nationally for elections where the Commonwealth has seen this other side Republican rise in, or is it just like, you know what, they're going to be some, we have them here, and they're going to vote for their national candidate as well as their local, because locally they are spread out down at the Vineyard Cape area was a stronghold at one time. Yeah. Now they are, are they mobilizing?
So I'll say this. My first job in politics was working for Ted Kennedy, and I worked for him for 14 years. It was a great experience. There's about 30, he understood very well, there are about 32% of the Bay State who would never vote for him under any circumstance. Under any circumstance. He still won his elections, so that was fine. So there is that piece, and that's okay too, to have a base of Republicans. There was the real concern in 24 for us was in places like Fall River and in Lawrence, where the Republican share really grew. Mm-hmm. Fall River voted for a Republican candidate for president, Trump, for the first time in 100 years.
Wow.
And it was very concerning. We've spent a lot of time since then down there working with the local committee and people down there to try to understand. And a lot of it was on the economy. And I think so a lot of people thought, and I have a neighbor in Lancaster who told me he voted for Trump because he thought his life was going to get better. And that it was better under him the first time. He said to me very clearly, he said, look, I understand you're probably going to tell me that it wasn't.
Right.
But that's how I feel. And I tell Democrats all the time, you can't win elections by telling people how to feel.
Right.
You have to hear them and talk to them about issues. And we've done that over the last year. And that's why I think you saw huge wins across the country and here in Massachusetts last Tuesday, because voters, even voters who voted for Trump, understood that he is not there for them, and that the Democratic Party understands them and will fight for them. We're imperfect. We are an imperfect party because we are made up of people who are by nature imperfect.
And it's a bigger tent. It's such
It's
a
much
wide
bigger
tent.
Yeah, it's super easy to say I'm going to do whatever Donald Trump tells me I'm going to do.
Right.
That's super easy.
Right.
Just follow that.
Right. There's no Thaddeus Stevens for the Democrats.
Good callback to Thaddeus Stevens. That's good.
That's my guy. Well, Frederick Douglass is my guy.
Of course, yes,
but the idea of a rallier as aggressive as a Thaddeus Stevens was, sorry guys, I'm like totally off. But the idea of somebody to rally people to push the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, to get that energy going in a time, in a period where people stood on what they stood on. There was no opportunity for fake news.
Right. And it was unfortunately, we always say this is the most divisive we've ever been. Thought Thaddeus Stevens served in Congress during the Civil War. I mean, there was literally a war dividing our country, and somehow we now think that this is the most divisive.
Right. That's why I always say, look at your history. This isn't. We can get through this.
We can get through this, and it's going to be about 1,100 and something days until the next president's sworn in. We can do that.
Yeah.
And more importantly, we've got about 356 or 7 days until the midterm elections, which everything. My husband and I bought a really old house during the pandemic, and a lot of projects come with a really old house.
Yeah.
And at one point he said, "Oh my God, it's too much." And I said, "What's the best way to eat an elephant?"
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time. And that's what we have to do. As activists, that's what we have to do. We have to organize on our street corner, at our kitchen table. We have to organize with our friends.
Yeah.
We have to organize in our labor union. We have to organize in our church. We have to do those things to work on city council races and school committee races and mayoral races and state rep races and on the way up. Because if we do that grassroots organizing, which is what the chair of the DNC really understands, because he's an organizer at heart, if you do that organizing, it bleeds up and out and can help us win at the top level. If you structure a DNC, which used to be many times structured this way,
top down,
where it is just it's the Democratic Presidential Election Committee. That's it.
Yeah.
And then everybody else gets the scraps.
Yeah. I was going to touch that because you were a guy. Your background in the careering of you as this operative, you were on not both sides, but you were in the campaign side, and then on the transition to a new government side.
Yeah.
So you've seen and then you keep seeing the pull and pulls.
Yeah.
As a person who goes from being campaigning to now governance.
Yes. Yes, and I will say, I tell people, I got asked to do this job by Governor Healy and then elected by the state committee once she took office. Mm-hmm. I first met Maura Healey when both of us were running for office back in 2014. I was running for lieutenant governor, and she was running for attorney general. I was lucky enough to be the party's nominee for lieutenant governor, but we lost that race by 9 votes a precinct to Charlie Baker in November. And what happened was 8 years of no investment in early childhood education, no investment in cities and towns, no investments in roads and bridges, no investments in housing, nothing. He believed in a government so small you can't even see it. Right. When Maura asked me to do this, I understood there was an opportunity for me in this role to really help the local communities organize so that you never lose a race by 9 votes a precinct again. Because my job isn't to just elect people. My job is to elect people who are going to then change the face of our communities.
That's why I talk about change. I'm a change guy. I'm a courage guy, and I think people have to have the courage to change. Mm-hmm. And that is sometimes
hard.
That is the piece. But that's the piece where it is hard for people who have. I wanted to get this a little later in our discussion, but it's kind of appropriate now. When you see leadership in city government, a lot of them are managed. They're not leaders. They manage what they have. They don't lead you to something else. And that is something that I think I see these cohorts growing. Leadership here in North Central Massachusetts. Leadership here. Right. We're going to change these boards, so we need new leaders. Yeah. But I don't know what they're leading to.
They're leading to them being a leader.
That's like, where are you going?
Yeah, it's so I when you look throughout history, change makers who, and you just hit it, can lay out what that looks like and are okay saying what it doesn't look like too.
Right.
And I think of President Roosevelt, I think of FDR, I think of President Kennedy, and I think of President Obama in a lot of ways, and to some extent President Trump, who laid out whether you like him, I mean,
Build a wall.
I can't stand right. Yeah. Which he never was going to do. I mean, like his
everybody knew. Everybody knew.
Is all hooey, but you know, they were able to lay out a very clear vision, but also be very honest and upfront, except for Trump, with the voters about what they couldn't do and what the challenges that laid ahead for the country. And I think when true leaders are honest with voters, and don't just tell them what they want to hear, but listen to them so that you can. I mean, if you look at some speeches of campaigns at the very beginning of a campaign and toward the end of their campaign, whether they're the nominee or not, if they haven't evolved,
right?
If they haven't learned, I mean, I remember when I started running for lieutenant governor in January of 2013 because nobody knew who I was, and I was from a tiny town and had no money, and so the stuff I was saying in January of 2013 versus November of 2014 vastly different. My core was still there,
right? But
you develop and you learn and you change, and that's what leaders are supposed to do. Sometimes people get in the business because they want a title,
yeah, they
want to be called a leader, and there's the old saying of the leader who says, "There go my people, I must follow them and find out where to lead them."
And that is, and
yeah.
I understand the problematic pieces of it, and I know that there's people that are trying to change that perception of what a political person is, and that. We have, I guess, probably more people in non-political positions that could be leaders than they have in political positions that are leaders. For you and your DNC role, do you look to groom our future? Where's our bench? How's the bench look?
I think
you have Senate races. You got Markey. They love him.
Yeah.
I think he's too old to be here. I think he needs a new somebody else to shoot.
Now's a good time to point out, as chair of the party, I have to be neutral in
I understand, but I just had to throw that out there while you're here, in case somebody else is listening to you being here.
I hear you. Yeah.
And that this has to be a movement of young, not just energy, but in the look too, because we're looking younger.
Yeah.
And we have to engage some of these young people. I know in this area of Massachusetts, we have housing areas that are more young people in it than they're older people.
Yeah.
And nobody goes for those guys.
Right. It's so part of what I do, and part of what I do is I look at areas where we start where there are Republicans in Massachusetts, and we look and try to identify viable, good Democrats who can run there, and we meet with them, and sometimes they say, why would I do that to myself and my family, and please leave me alone. Sometimes they take us up on the offer. Other times there are areas that are very Democratic, and our job is really to help guide and shift people, but if a bunch of people get there, it's like we had a number of candidates who were running a couple of weeks. Well, they're running for races next year, and I won't tell you what races, but they're running. And a couple of weeks ago, they were saying, "I'm running because Democrats need to get their act together." And then I called them all, and I said, "Look, I just want to do whatever you say. Do whatever you want to say. It's your campaign, but Democrats aren't that bumfuzzled. And when you're talking about Democrats, people always say, "Oh, the Democrats are messed up." If you're mad about members of Congress who aren't doing what you want to do, say that.
Right.
Don't just blame the entire Democratic Party, because then, and I said this to these candidates, I said then, because if you become a nominee, you're going to come to us.
Right.
And me convincing a bunch of my people after you've just kicked their teeth in for 9 months to do stuff for you.
And that is one of the things that I because I'm outside looking in, I don't have a hand in any of these races or anything like that, but I'm politically aware. Yeah. So I know some things. And then looking at the things, and you're like, well, shouldn't there be a fight? Shouldn't I have somebody to say yeah to versus somebody I'm just saying no to?
Well, so I agree. So, the flip side of the story I was just telling you is that a week later, Democrats swept elections all across the country in ways that we had never hoped for.
So, right.
And so Democrats being the political structure being messed up, not right.
Right.
And then a week after that, or less than, 8 members of the Senate decided to bail on what was a very good plan to secure people's health care. Those 8 Democrats, they're messed up. Doesn't mean the whole party is, but it is. A lot of people say to me, "Why don't you go out and recruit young people to run against Democrats?" That's not my job. That is specifically not my job. To run for open seats, to challenge Republicans, absolutely, that's what we do all the time.
Okay.
Politics is a dirty word these days and has been for quite a while. So convincing folks to give up a business or huge parts of their life to do this is difficult, but that's my job. What I do encourage folks to do is, if you don't like the representation that you have, change it.
Yeah.
Like decide to change it, organize in your neighborhood, organize in your congressional district or your state rep district, and move to change it. That is the only time there's ever been sweeping change in this country is when a small group of people decided to step up and make a change.
And we're going back to a harbor. There was some tea in it.
Yes, right.
And this is the idea of the revolution, the revolutionary.
Yeah.
It takes and looks many forms. From there was tea. Now it could be a boycott, a sit-in, or a demonstration, a No Kings rally. There's other forms of ways to be that revolutionary person. And some of the ideas that we present are revolutionary.
Yeah.
One of the things that I look at, and I'm kind of jump down to localities, is that local governments are run differently in the Commonwealth. You'll have a strong mayor in some areas. Then you'll have a city manager in some areas. Some areas may have a council, a town council, selectmen that run. Is there a way for, I know there is a way, but how can you get that revolutionary change that might be needed in a form of government in the localities to push up? Like,
so to change a form of government,
charter
changes that then have to get approved locally and then approved at the State House. Not impossible, challenging, but not impossible. But it does start with the grassroots organizing in the community, because it's got to start with somebody saying, we want to change this. You know, like we have a 3-person select board in my hometown. I was chair of the board for the last 3 years. Blissfully got off of the board. I love my community, but I also like having any time to myself. And there was a push for a 5-person board.
Okay.
I did not like that. I voted against it and advocated against it because the people who were advocating for it, all well-intentioned, were saying a 5-person board. We're a small town. It was hard enough to get 3 people to run for office, let alone 5. And they were saying, well, 5 people would allow the select board to have meetings 2 at a time without them being public meetings.
Without being public meetings. That sounds red flag.
Thank you. I was like, what are you trying to hide? I haven't had a problem with this. So we pushed back against that. That would have required passing it passed at the legislature. It would have required us to pass it by vote. It failed miserably. But that grassroots organizing is really important, whether it's recruiting candidates to run or changing things in your community is important, which is why when I became chair 2.5 years ago, one of the initiatives I launched was a thing called Blue Local, which is really focused on local town and city committees and ward committees. And I'm proud to say that as of, I think, last week, we have launched 18 or 20 new Democratic town committees in Massachusetts. You would think we had them everywhere.
Right.
But there was about 10-20% of the Commonwealth where there wasn't any town committee. And those are in your Sutton's a great example. Sutton, right down the road. Sutton hadn't had a town committee in 20 or 30 years. They tried a long time ago, couldn't get it done. After Trump's election, I always say he's terrible for the country, but really good for civic engagement, because everybody
gets involved.
They're like, okay, let's go.
Which is
anyway. Maybe be involved before, and he won't get elected. But
that's
a whole other. But so they formed a town committee in January. They got started meeting, getting organized. And then in the May or June town elections, they ran 5 Democrats that they recruited for 5 local elections that were held all by Republicans. And they won 4 out of 5 seats.
Wow.
Just in January to May. By putting their mind to it, by getting like-minded people in a room and getting to work. And that's how change can start. It can start on a school board, on a library trustee board, on the select board, and move on up.
And that's kind of one of the things I have in here as a question, or getting people who complain a lot, how to get them motivated to action. And this sounds like something that you start at your level. You don't have to worry about changing the national scene if your locality is something that you can touch and really have an effect at doing.
Right, but local action can sweep nations and worlds. I mean, there was a great story I heard that I had not heard before recently, and I remember this period of time because I was in college and I carried my little list for boycotts. But there were 3 greengrocers in Ireland, in this small little neighborhood. 3 little old Irish ladies in Central Ireland who decided they were going to stop carrying grapefruits. This was the late 80s because South Africa was the biggest exporter of grapefruits.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've
I
heard this
this
story.
Yeah,
and everyone's like, okay, great, no one likes grapefruits in Ireland, but go ahead, we won't
Right.
sell them. But they kept doing it, and then people would show up and volunteer. There was a man from South Africa who came and volunteered with them, who later turned out was Nelson Mandela's cellmate, but never told them. But like they swept the movement across Ireland, across the UK, across Europe. We all, of course, engaged in boycotts here in the United States. Apartheid fell, and they were invited to Nelson Mandela's inauguration. I mean, if you start in your little, Barack Obama was a community organizer in South Side of Chicago. You start in your local community. You may not become president, because most folks don't.
Right.
But you're going to change the world.
Right.
If you do something in your community to make things better. My folks used to say all the time, and they would teach my brother and sister and I this, that if you have an opportunity and the ability to make a difference, you have an obligation to try.
Okay.
And that difference could just be for your neighbor.
Right.
It can be for your church. I taught a class for a while, a number of years ago, and I used to ask the students how they defined community.
Okay.
And was it your church, your dorm room, your neighborhood, your country, whatever it was, and then what do you feel your obligation is to that community? And then what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And that's, if we all ask ourselves that, sweeping change can look a lot different to people. It doesn't always have to be sweeping away apartheid, although we should always try to whenever we see it. But it can make a huge difference, particularly now when people are hungry in this country. Just, finding a way to give a little bit back just makes a huge difference.
And sweeping to that the idea is, it's like a generalization, but it's community, right? What happens when the community votes for something and leadership is dragging their feet on implementing it Commonwealth-wide? I mean, particularly you have, anything under the cannabis umbrella, it seems, is very slow. Now we have an audit that wants to be held for the legislature.
Right.
How does the people who voted for these things still can't get them implemented because leadership is not, maybe moving things as fast as they can?
I'll say two things in particular about, I think it was question one last year, but the audit question. When people say the legislature's not doing, the legislature, the same day that 72% of people voted for question one, they re-elected the same legislature. Those people at the same time said, we'd like the auditor to have ability to audit in a very general term. And then they said, we'd like these people to represent us. So you can't look at them in two different ways. I will also say this, people vote for transparency because it's important. So I'm just going to be grossly political. We put vote for transparency on that ballot question against that 5-person expansion in my town. Because I knew people didn't want 2 people meeting in private.
Right.
But also, people are going to vote for transparency.
Right.
And so, but then I would, so back onto the audit, the Attorney General has been very clear, and this is not something we get involved in because we're not a policy body at the state committee, at the state party, but the Attorney General has said, at least in recent interviews, that she's asked the auditor to tell the Attorney General what she wants to audit specifically, and if she does that, then she can go to work in court getting it done.
For a particular reason.
Well, because there's a constitutional, and I leave this all to the Attorney General. I ran the Attorney General's office many AGs ago, so I leave that to her to figure out. But my understanding is they're in conversations, and it's not as easy as saying they voted for it, just do it, because an audit is vast. They have, the legislature has a financial audit every year. Basically, my understanding from press reports is the AG is just saying, tell me what you'd like to audit, and then we'll get into it.
Okay. All right. So we're going to jump down to, we got to wrap up. He got like a minute left. How can we get you back here to have a discussion with the community about the direction of the leadership of the Democratic Party nationally, because of those two transparency questions, and then on the broader nationally, how we can, the 8 Democrats that cracked, how can we, Thaddeus Stevens, the whole crew together, and without being, not doing the Donald Trump, I'll beat you in the head, but, or sue you, which is, he's killing everybody with the suits.
Very litigious.
Yes.
Yeah.
How can we bring you back to this community and then maybe a tour, like how to educate civically, because what you were saying about these phone calls and people.
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot of people who would be more people interested in getting involved in
No,
that.
I would love it. Look, have me back anytime. As you know, Cedric, and I'll tell all of you, I also am the proud president and CEO of the Kennedy Community Health Center, which is in Great Brook Valley in Lincoln Square. And we are there as well as in Framingham and Milford. And so this community is really important to me.
Yeah.
I was born in Worcester at Hahnemann Hospital. I live in north central Worcester County. So it's very important to me that we build a strong community for our future as possible. And I think of, when you think about changing our communities, and I'll finish with this, we were founded as a health center in 1972 by 7 moms who lived at Great Brook Valley in the housing complex. 7 moms who were sick and tired of putting their kids on the city bus when they were sick to go to the hospital, and coming back with a slip to say, see your primary care doctor, when they didn't have a primary care doctor.
Right.
And so they created a health center 53 years ago, and now, since then, from their one nurse practitioner, we have 400 and something employees at 11 sites, serving 35,000 patients. Those 7 women wanted to fix a problem in their neighborhood. And now it's fixing issues for people all across Massachusetts and impacting thousands and thousands of families. So everyone can make a difference. All of us just have to try.
All right, locally, y'all, we're going to have Chairman Steve Kerrigan back.
Yes.
He has an expansive history of careering with
I'm going to use that for now.
with the political sphere. I mean, he was an operative. He's now a chairman. He ran for office, Commonwealth, statewide. So he's a wealth of knowledge that I think we should kind of absorb. And if you guys are interested, give him a call, reach out to his office, let them know that you want to see him back locally and that he is a wealth of information that seems willing to share.
I would love to be back anytime, Cedric. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys for being here. Have a great night, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in this day.